Welcome to the Forest Harvest CBNE Forum 2021. Thank you for joining us this week as we foster information exchange, capacity enhancement, market engagement, and political action in support of the community-based NTFP enterprises. Our moderator for the session is Ms. Femi Pinto. She's the Executive Director of NTFP-EP Asia. She has over 20 years' experience working with indigenous communities and CBNEs, management of NGOs, policy advocacy, and convening regional and multi-stakeholder networks on forest and natural resources governance and livelihoods. And please welcome our moderator, Ms. Pinto.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to our last session for the day. I hope people still have the energy to stay on with us, and well, thank you for those who have. And welcome to our last roundtable discussion on scaling and securing CBNEs, stakeholders, and strategies. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded and that translations are available in Bahasa, Filipino, Vietnamese, Thai, Khmer, Nepali. And if you need a translation, please click the interpretation button below and choose your language. Nepali is in the Chinese channel. In this session, we will get an overview of the different stakeholders and strategies that have the potential to support the development of community-based enterprises and promote sustainable livelihoods and forest management. Let me just talk about scaling briefly. When we speak of scaling, sometimes we hear more the word upscaling for businesses or CBNEs. It's not simply about growth or simply put an increase in market share or revenues, but proportional growth and more importantly, in a profitable way. Operating more efficiently, for example, and gains are more than costs rather than at best in a simple business growth, revenues and costs just even out. So we will talk about 4 key strategies to scaling CBNEs. The first one on engaging with entrepreneurs, finding the right financing match. The third, leapfrogging with technology. And lastly, tapping the power of communities of engaged citizens. We have 3 speakers, and I'm pleased to say they're all women from different sectors who will talk about their experience and their ideas about scaling CBNEs and what their role and contributions from where they are positioned in scaling and securing success of CBNEs. They will also share their tips and strategies on how CBNEs can successfully engage with them. So let me introduce them. Our panelists include Ms. Patricia Hutapea, a social entrepreneur and co-founder of PT Usaha Kita Makmur Indonesia, PT UKMI. She is the business development head and has helped Indonesian small and medium enterprises as part of corporate social responsibility efforts. She also founded Cash Chipat, a fintech payment company, so she'll be wearing 2 hats in this session. And so she will represent both the sector of social entrepreneurship and tech-based company. We also have with us Ms. Satoko Kono, president of Arun LLC Japan, who can give us the perspectives from the impact investment sector. Her inspiration to promote social investment emerged from her 10 years of experiences in Cambodia. Prior to founding Arun, she was working with NGOs and international aid agencies such as JICA and World Bank, through which she gained outstanding knowledge and personal network in social development in Asia and Africa. Satoko has an MSc from the London School of Economics and Political Science and a BA from the International Christian University. Finally, we have with us Ms. Jen Horn, the founder of Mooney and space holder for reflections and conversations on creating a more mindful and livable world. She is a certified transformational coach, working primarily for women in sustainable development and ecosystem restoration. She's also a sustainability lecturer at the Ateneo de Manila University School of Management in the Philippines. I would like to give them a warm welcome and thank you all panelists to joining us this afternoon. So I have different questions for each of you, and I would like to start with Patricia. So Patricia, firstly, so the questions for everyone would be how you are engaged with communities and what made you decide to engage in this field. So for Patricia, as our social entrepreneur in this panel, what community products are you currently promoting for your business, and how and why did you start to work with community products?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to meet all of you here, regardless of the current situation that is going on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
it's okay.
Um, yeah, so for regarding the first question, our company was actually established in 2004. It was co-founded by me and my mother, and it was a trading company and also an intermediary company with the vision of providing uh, um, a stable quality, quantity, and continuity of supply for SME products. Our original vision was small and medium enterprise, but then as we go through different products that is available in the market, we realized that actually many products comes from the community base and indigenous people, produced by indigenous people. If you can share the presentation that I prepare for all the products that we are
Mhm.
currently distributing in Indonesia. Uh, Basically, we try to find markets for these products. Can you go to the next one? The next one? Yeah. So from all of these small and medium enterprise, there are two that is particularly relevant to today's discussion. That is the forest honey and also coffee, because they are produced by indigenous people, especially for forest honey. We work together with Jaringan Madu Hutan Indonesia. We were actually originally introduced by Swiss Contact, an NGO. That's why we get to know this very high quality product, which is the forest honey. And we started selling it. Uh, our biggest retailer distribution channel is actually Amway, a multi-level marketing. And in additional to that, it's also normal retail market. Now we are also selling online, but still our biggest distributor is still Amway. I think why we are interested in doing this is because um, hopefully I'm speaking um, for everyone. I mean, as a woman, I feel that um, in this society, um, just pursuing profit and monetary gain would not give you total satisfaction. So we need to balance the effort in gaining monetary achievements and all that with sharing back to the community. So this is our we see this as a CSR arm of our family business, and we feel actually more rewarded by doing this rather than the other parts of the business. Although it is not easy, it is very difficult because we don't make much margin, and the quality of the product sometimes give us difficulty, so that the distribution channel sometimes complain, and then we have to do certain kind of either bridging or refund and things like that. So it is not an easy thing, but it is the most rewarding. And there was in 2004 in, should I continue with the tech
Sure,
also?
sure. Yeah.
So continuing from 2004, in 2017, we started uh, a fintech company, a financial technology company. And because we already have UKMI, we already have UKMI, who is distributing all these community-based products, we feel that we have to link it also to the financial technology. Our financial technology is called Cash Cepat, or also means fast cash. It is a platform, it's apps in your mobile phone in Indonesia, Android based, where you can download and you can borrow money and you can borrow money and for your financial needs. And then we feel that in Indonesia, we call it, there are three things that moves the economy, which is barang, orang, and uang. So it's the goods, it's the people, and the money or the fund itself. So because I already have the community, which is the people, and also the product, which is all the honey and the coffee and everything that I mentioned before, this economic activity actually needs fund to be able to, as part of the third gear, to move the economy. So that is why, in addition to my normal operation in Cash Cepat, I also include the honey hunters and honey farmers as part of my beneficiary for I give them funding for the pre-harvesting, for their pre-harvesting operation. So as I mentioned, this is an app that is in Android base, and it is because this is finance, it's very different from UKMI. It's very heavily regulated. So if you see in the timeline, it's all about like registering to government and then getting license and things like that. And even the license takes 3 years, 3 whole years. And this is the scheme that is going on. So as you see, there are cooperatives, because each of the honey hunters, they all have cooperatives. And currently we are working on 2 locations, which is the Kalimantan and also Sumbawa. And the Cash Cepat itself is actually not lending our own money, because that's what the government is asking us. We need to get money from lender. So just like a bank, somebody have to put deposit to us, and then we channel the money to help these farmers through the cooperatives to finance their pre-harvesting. For example, they can buy harvesting tools, or I heard like raincoats so that they don't get stung by bees and things like that. So this money is dropped to them before the harvest. But then after the harvest, the honey hunters don't have to return the money back. They pay with honey to UKMI. And then UKMI is the one who pay Cash Cepat. So that is how the scheme is going on. And then the financial part of it is that the cooperatives and the honey hunters have to go through certain eKYC, electronic KYC, and then they take picture of the goods and everything. And I just have to sit in my office in Jakarta. I don't have to go. I do a preliminary check to the honey farmers, but then when the fund is transferred, I don't have to do that. The honey hunters and the cooperatives just have to have an app, and then we do eKYC digitally, and then the money is transferred to the cooperatives, and then cooperatives will have money to distribute to the farmers. So that's my brief description of what my 2 efforts are for UKMI and for Cash Cepat.
Thank you, Patricia. I think that's very interesting when you said about the initial motivation of starting really with some kind of a personal mission and how to give back and also target the communities and support to them directly, and how strategically you also thought of expanding and leveraging that kind of support and extending that support by initiating another kind of relevant enterprise as with the Cash Cepat. But we'll ask more about that later for each of your endeavors, and maybe ask our participants if they want you to go into some details in some of these strategies. But let me go to Satoko maybe with the first question of how and why you got engaged in this type of support for community enterprises. How does an impact investment work in relation to community enterprises, and what makes this different from other financing modes, and what made Arun or you decide to set up Arun and target community enterprises as beneficiaries? Thank you, Satoko.
Thank you. Thank you, Femi, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Satoko, and thank you for of this great forum. I was a bit early, and I was looking at honey presentation from Nepal, and I was very kind of remembering my experience in Cambodia, working with the honey hunter communities and also NTFPs in Cambodia. Well, I started this work because I met with an entrepreneur in Cambodia working with the community, and I learned about the social investment through this initiative in Cambodia. So my heart and my passion is always with entrepreneur who is trying to work with community and who is trying to make a sustainable living and also try to make a sustainable society. Is it possible to share the screen?
Yes. So
yes. Okay.
So you can, if you have sent it,
maybe
if you have sent it, they can show it, or maybe they will allow you to share from your side.
Okay.
You can share from your screen. You can share from your screen.
Okay. Let me. Just a second.
Is it working?
I think so. Okay. Maybe
There.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Since Femi introduced me as an investor, so I will just briefly talk about social impact investing. Social impact investment is has like a definition like this. Like impact investment is important part is its intention to generate positive and measurable social impact and environmental impact alongside the financial return. So this intentionality and also use of evidence and impact data and management of impact performance is very important. And it is a growing trend. And I think now it's already like impact investment or to seek both financial return and impact, social impact is getting normal, I think, that you have to pursue both as an investor. And globally, asset under management is counted 715 billion US dollar. So it is a growing trend, obviously. And when, oh, sorry. Yeah. So so this is also very familiar, I think, chart. If you see that financial only investment, that looking at only the financial data is one spectrum, one side of the spectrum, then you will see that the other side of the spectrum, that impact only. So impact investing is like looking at both the financial return and the social impact. And okay. And I think Femi's question is where the community activities and the community engagement, community enterprise coming to this picture. When I started impact investing in Cambodia, our first counterpart was working in a farmers community in Cambodia. And one of the farmers communities in northeast part of Cambodia where indigenous people lives. And there the important livelihood is based on non-timber forest products. And honey is one of them. So we started with the farmers, with rice farmers, but eventually we decided to work with the indigenous community, with honey hunters as well. And we try to invest into this value chain to support the indigenous community to improve their livelihood through their community business. For that, as an investor, we need the counterpart locally. So we have a local business entity who support this value chain, as well as we have a technical counterpart who support the indigenous community to develop their products. Like Patricia also mentioned about different products, I imagine there are lots of quality improvement effort involved in that. So as an investor, we work with local counterpart to advance those skills and management skills, technical skills of indigenous communities. And as a startup impact investor, we provide the technical support as well. And from that experience, we see that the local community can grow, but we see the different players need to support the community's engagement and community business development. Maybe I will share one more time my screen, sorry. And we have, for Arun's vision is to create a society all members live and enjoy the full range of their talents and abilities, regardless of background and economic status. So we try to work with people especially in inequality situations, And to create equity and equality is very important part of our investment. Technically, we do support investor to do a deal sourcing, and we do investment and advisory services. And as I mentioned, we support entrepreneur post investment. So we try to go hand in hand with entrepreneur and to work with entrepreneur. And normally these social enterprises work with communities and trying to create impact. I would like to, maybe I would like to show some example, but maybe I will stop here, and then if I have more time, I will show some example. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Satoko, for that initiating us on how you started. That you came from NGO sector and then moved into social impact investment. Maybe in your story, that's quite a good way to start because you have an understanding of the developmental concerns, the communities, and having met with an entrepreneur, you saw a good match to be able to support communities directly. And I think one of the factors that you also mentioned about having and finding technical counterparts, so that matching with the partners that would support technically the communities, and then you would be brokering with potential investors. So we'll come back to some of the examples so our participants can also understand better how they might engage with impact investors like Arun in the future, and if they haven't had experience yet. So I would go to our third speaker to also give us a background of her engagement. So we invited Ms. Jen Horn from the point of view of an engaged private citizen. So please tell us a bit about Mooney, Jen, and the story of building a community around sustainability and mindful living. What role or power do you see engaged and conscious private citizens or communities can play and hold in driving change towards a more sustainable and green economy and society?
Hi, family.
Yes.
Thanks for having me here. I feel like it's so formal and serious, and maybe I just want to
Relax us.
relax a little bit. And first, I want to just also share, like earlier, I was listening on the other channels with the interpretation, and it's just nice for me to just hear everyone's language and how it all sounds.
Yes.
Thank you so much to the interpreters. I will try to speak slowly because I tend to talk fast. So anyway, to answer Femi's question, I think my journey into like engaging with community-based enterprises started first. I mean, I'm not going to tell like a very super long story, but back when I started Mooney, so before I talk about what Mooney is, I just wanted to share, like, before I used to be an entrepreneur creating random other products that weren't necessarily sustainable. And I was just finding this feeling, like what Patricia said, you know, you want to be able to do something that also contributes and gives back. But I was rethinking whether my personal role in that sort of system was as an entrepreneur or as someone who just builds community and helps support other entrepreneurs who are, I feel like, trying to do things in a more socially and environmentally sustainable way. And really, like, the switch was through a number of different sparks or inspirations of like making me think about my own impact on the environment, but also seeing what was happening around me in terms of so back in 2012 there was also this whole like tree cutting issue that was happening in a mountain city in the Philippines, which was, and they were like debating like cutting trees for the expansion of like real estate or like a retail complex, right? And it just made me think of how unsustainable the approach to business was. And so that's just shaped how the different ways that I guess I show up in this world, whether it's through the work that I do with Mooney, which I'll introduce in a little bit, or how I show up as a, currently I'm a lecturer in a university in the Philippines as well, but also how I show up also as a coach. And now I'm also, I do coaching for women leaders, primarily working in the sustainability space, and I want to be able to support them in just continuing the work that they do. So but basically with Mooney, as introduced also earlier, what we do is we, as Femi said, is we grow community by creating reflections on conversations on creating a more mindful, equitable, and livable world. And I know those are all very kind of big terms. And I guess that is just the sort of conversations that we want to be able to hold space for. And that encompasses many different things. Over the years, things have changed. Initially, when we were starting, it was very much around, how can we learn more about social enterprises? How do we understand the value that of the work that social entrepreneurs do, and how can consumers support social enterprises? So we would host different events. We would host discussions to raise awareness about conscious consumption. It's like this term, and then we would also organize markets for healthy, local, eco-friendly products from 2014 to 2017. But then later, as the years were going by, we realized like what we found more value in was in the conversations that we were able to host, rather than the markets that we were organizing. And we just like the more personal interaction that we would have through those events, and we were also slowly as individuals, but perhaps also as a community, recognizing our role beyond just the consumption part. So like apart from, and with COVID happening last year, we were also planning to move towards digital, and because a lot of our events are normally in person. And even before COVID happened, we were already thinking about how we were going to pursue more digital avenues to connect with our community. And but before COVID happened last year, in February, we also launched the Mooney on This podcast as a way to, sort of have these conversations that will also be able to reach people even if they can't come to our event physically, and then they can also access those conversations whenever they want, and they can listen to our podcast while they're, I don't know, cooking or walking or taking a shower or whatever. And then we also conducted a few online events last year, but not too many. And the range of topics that we would have in the podcast are really kind of an array, as you guys can see also through this little graphic that I have here. So, I mean, basically, we've covered different topics, including arts for conservation. We talked to different watercolor artists about how they were using their art to raise awareness about sustainability. We also talked to different writers about how they were using writing to talk about sustainability or generate awareness and empathy or care for the environment. We talked to different people who were starting community food gardens. We also spoke with two women who were leading their own either community-based enterprise or nonprofit or a movement to even protect the interests of indigenous people. So that's something that I would also maybe share a little later. But so we have these different ways that we're trying to talk about what it means to have a more mindful, equitable, and livable world. And then one of the other episodes that we also did in collaboration with the British Council was around the future of craft or crafting in a post-COVID future. And the discussion that happened around that was really around how, parang it's almost like an existential question about how people will now value craft moving forward. But the interesting thing that came out of that conversation, and I'm saying this because I think that community-based enterprises, when we talk about craft, it's very relevant, right? And I think if anything, and as validated as well by the people in that particular episode, COVID has made us appreciate craft even more, and the things that are slow and the things that take time, which is reminding me to also speak slowly. Sorry, interpreters. And yeah, so I think there's this growing awareness about the importance of things that are slow, things that take time, and I hope that this is also an opportunity for community-based enterprises to highlight that and be able to speak about the value of that to other people as well. And I think on a final note, perhaps, and yeah, just talking about the different ways we can sort of show up and engage as citizens, right? Or think about our role. So I'm not sure if what the composition of the audience is here today, but whether you're a community-based enterprise, whether you're part of a community-based enterprise, you also still have many roles in your lives, ways we show up in the world that are beyond just the work that we do as well. And so that's why we try to highlight the importance of also thinking of yourself as a citizen. And if I can just show one more slide. Oh, actually, it's not moving forward. Okay, never mind. I won't show that slide. But basically, there's this concept also of the great turning, which is, right now we're experiencing 3 stories of our time, right? We have, the business as usual, which is very unsustainable, very extractive, damaging to people and the environment. And we're seeing the impacts of that, right? And the second story is the story of the great unraveling, or us witnessing the impacts of that business as usual, and then seeing how it's leading to climate change and to ecological collapse and just injustice also for indigenous communities or people who are protecting the land. But there is a third story that's also happening, and the third story is called the Great Turning, which is the story of us working together towards a more life-sustaining society. Sorry if this is taking too much time. This is the last point. But in this Great Turning, right, there's 3 dimensions as well. And so first we see holding actions in defense of life. And this could be protests, this could be boycotts or petitions or policies to protect the land that is being raped and pillaged perhaps by corporate greed. And so one of the people we interviewed in our podcast, how she helps community-based enterprises is precisely by advocating for policies that help protect the land. So those things are important, right? That's one. That's the holding dimensions, holding actions in defense of life. The second dimension is transforming the foundations of our common life. And that is like what you guys are doing, you know, social enterprises, whether it's like zero waste stores or community food gardens. It's changing the structure of how we show up in society, how things are configured in our world. And then, so yeah, so you play that role, but there's also a role that you could play in the holding dimension. And in the last dimension, it's shifting values, mindsets, and perceptions. And I feel personally, this is more where my role lies, whether in the work that I do with Mooney, whether it's how I teach my students in university or how I work as a coach. I hope, you know, we as a society are able to sort of collectively come together to think of, you know, what is essentially really valuable in this world. And I think we have so much to learn from indigenous communities, and a lot of people, like perhaps in the city, have forgotten a lot of the wisdom that is there. And so now it seems like we've almost forgotten what is truly valuable and important, that we need to remember as humans. But anyway, sorry, I'm talking too much. So with that, I will turn the floor over back to Femi. Femi, I think you're muted. You've been muted the whole time.
Sorry about that. So I thank you very much, Jen, for that. I was just saying that thank you for helping, taking us through your personal journey and your motivations for expanding your community and also encouraging other people to be bigger than themselves and be active in the greater society. But I'd like to go back again to Patricia and then to Satoko and back to you, Jen, with this next question about engaging your sector by the CBNEs themselves. How can your sector, whether for Patricia, it's as a social entrepreneur and also with finance and tech, and then with Satoko for financing, and you as kind of a public concerned citizen, Jen, how do you think you can better or effectively support what seems like a remote area from your own? How can the CBNEs reach you? What challenges do you see for the CBNEs to engage with you directly? And what can be done to overcome this? Or maybe you are already trying to bridge that gap, and maybe you can share a little bit from your own perspective. So I'll start off with Patricia.
To be honest, currently in the pandemic era, finding market for community-based product has not been very easy, especially because our retailers also impacted by a slow in sales, and also somehow many of them overconfident with the purchase order that they did last year, so they overestimated their order. So as a result, many of the product that they bought last year have quality issue at the end of the expiry life cycle, the expiry product life cycle. So this year is full about taking care of their, like, negotiating with them about how to settle this problem. I think going forward, I think as an intermediary trading company, as this pandemic go forward, I'm talking from the UKMI with my UKMI hat. I need to go more digital in the distribution and the sales for the products. So right now, I think because Amway is still traditional and not digital and it is being impacted by all the e-commerce um, that is being boosted, and all the apps for buying fresh produce and everything that is being boosted by the current situation. So for us now, it's a bit difficult to um, increase the supply. So right now we are still taking care of the, the, the other end to make it more digital. Yeah.
In terms of the finance and the tech, so because it's interlinked, so that
Yes.
tends to then roll into the same
Yeah. For the
to the other company, right?
yeah, for the financing, thankfully it's already digital.
Uh-huh.
So we still have we still have rooms because the government is actually always as in the trading company, as in the fintech company, they always encourage a bigger percentage to be in the productive sector instead of in the consumptive sector. So um, the percentage is getting higher and higher. Like last year, it was 25%. And then I heard going forward, it will be 40%. So that I have to find communities where I can finance. So that's probably things that I can work on together with
Mhm.
guys. Of course, because of the pandemic again, because I'm only channeling money from lenders, the appetite of lenders to lend money is also decreased. But then because of the requirement percentage is increased in financing productive sector, I think there's still room to engage in working together with you on the financing part.
But in your case, can you give an example, since you were discussing about honey, the honey groups, and then for your finance and tech, were you also working with them, and can you still continue with the same type of enterprises, or you had to also find other other communities or local enterprises, because in the honey, is it still the same, or you had
Yeah.
to shift?
Um, Actually, because of the percentage requirement keep increasing, for us it's very natural to give financing to the honey sector because it is something that we work on anyway, and we know all the stakeholders there. But unfortunately, there are always failure of harvest in Indonesia, so we couldn't get honey supply for it. So right now we are working with other community, which are the sellers in traditional markets for financing their needs.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we are always looking for new community to do financing.
Mhm.
We call it closed loop financing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Patricia. In some ways, yeah, you mentioned about the real challenges, especially now during the pandemic. So there are you are also hit by that in different ways. So it's also good for the CBNEs to see it from your point of view. You are able to move to other communities to support them, but then yeah, it will be challenging for others that you may have been previously supporting. But that's the real situation that we have at the moment. Maybe I go to Satoko, the same question. From the social investment point of view, how can your sector effectively support what seems like a remote area from your own, the forest dependent communities and CBNEs, and what challenges do you see for them to reach you or to engage with you, and what can be done to overcome this?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a big question. I don't know where to start. Okay, and I think some of the key I'm trying to talk is one is again, I think you are all clear, but still again, the purpose, why you do this, why this is important for your community, and what you do this, and who are the one doing it. As an investor, entrepreneur, him or herself or themselves are very important. But I think each one of you in the community, who you are and who you are working with, is very important, because it is come back to what is your purpose of doing this. So this is one, to be clear. And two, again, as an impact investor, we are trying to work together with entrepreneur and the community to create impact. So then what impact you are trying to create is very essential. Of course, we try to work with entrepreneur, with community, but then I think the essential owner of the project is community and the entrepreneur. So the what theory of change you may want to say, or what impact you try to create, is very important and is essential. It has to come from the community itself. And the third one, as when you seek finance, the purpose of the finance, if you get money, what do you want to use for? Is it working capital? Is it for growth? And the money that you receive, how you are going to use it. It is very important. Depends on that, you may want to seek different types of financing. Maybe grant, maybe lending, or maybe you want to seek for equity investor. When we say impact investing, it includes wide spectrum. Some definition doesn't include grant, but some definition, they even include grant, or at least the social enterprise seek funding from different spectrum of financier, and then it often include grant. So what is the purpose of money? Then you seek for different sources, I think. And the last one, especially from the investor, equity investor, we do equity investment. Equity investor point of view, digital is very important, as Patricia mentioned, because we see that the digital can contribute to the growth of the business and also scale of the business. And maybe we hope that this will increase the equality of the opportunity to the people. So of course, there are different usage of the digital, but we look for the usage of the digital for the increasing the equality. And in that sense, I think digital is one of the important point. Yeah, maybe I will stop this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satoko, for that perspective as well. And what I picked up there as well is that in some ways your company, Arun, could deal with communities and entrepreneurs, and they might be different. So it's like there's implicit in that a partnership between an entrepreneur and community, and you are addressing these important questions and recommendations on both them, entrepreneurs and the communities, on really understand and internalize what is the impact for you, what is your purpose, what do you want to drive at, and if approaching an impact investor like Arun, that's important to address and to communicate, and what would be the purpose of financing. So that's a good message to convey. I'll go to Jen with the same question of how, from your point of view as a citizen, but then you're also trying to build your own community, how do you think you can effectively support, or maybe you have explained how you try to expand that, but how would you think you can effectively reach the CBNEs, the communities themselves, bridge that sense of remoteness from them, and what challenges do you see for them to engage with you?
Okay, so I'm also not sure exactly how to answer this question. But yeah, I feel like I'm not as much, an expert. And I think I disclaimer this very much prior to you inviting me here. But I think, yeah, definitely one of the major challenges that I imagine that the CBNEs have to face is really like connectivity and like digital platforms, which we have all been sort of forced into with COVID. It's definitely been a challenge, and I can see how, given that this is the primary venue for that, and that people can't necessarily, go on the ground or even, do markets to advertise their products in the same way. It's definitely more challenging. And I think maybe I would just respond to this question perhaps a little generally, and maybe not super specific to Muni. I mean, apart from, of course, you can listen to our podcast or join our events when they happen. I think also just like looking at what's out there, and just trying to find, it has to be online, I guess, trying to find online like what are the other communities that you can plug into, trying to find whether they be like Facebook communities, and like I think the transition to digital can be a bit more overwhelming for CBNEs if you think of it as if you have to create your own platform on your own. But I think there's a lot of value in sort of plugging into other networks. So trying to figure out who are the players in your country who are maybe trying to advocate for more sustainable products. Are there sort of e-commerce marketplaces that are a bit more mindful as well about how they communicate about products, because the products that you are also bringing to the market aren't just highly processed, like mass produced things. These are sustainably sourced or like handmade products, and they have a particular value that we want to communicate to consumers. And it's, again, when you talk about scale, it's not necessarily the amount of product that you want to be able to produce and sell, but then also how do you tell that story to consumers about how, like, what is the value of your product and what makes it more sustainable, more special, because it is, right? So yeah, just finding the networks or the communities in your country that sort of speak to that and can help you. And then, because in the Philippines, there's probably a few, I can't speak for the rest of the region, but like, I don't know, like Things That Matter perhaps, or other more curated online marketplaces that are intentional with their storytelling, and that they say, like where the product comes from, because consumers actually will pay attention and value this. So I think looking for those as well in your respective countries would be a good place to start. I'm not sure if that's helpful, Femi.
Yes, yes. I think our participants, our audience would find that useful. It's quite um, kind of straightforward in the sense that build your own community or find that match. If you're a CBNE, you get to know who is going to likely be your buyer, and it could be someone like Jen, someone like a private citizen. So find them, and right now with the digital platforms, that might be a way to kind of bridge the gap. We now would like to move to allow our participants to ask you guys a few questions, and I see there are some who have already put on the chat, and I will just read the first one addressed to, I think it was Patricia. To Patricia, what was the timeline that was required for your honey project to take off? So a little bit more story, and particular to what our participants are doing right now.
You mean from the first time that we met, we heard about the honey?
Yeah, I suppose, and with Amway, yeah, that the very first part of your sharing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from Nepal, by the way, so they are interested to know more.
Yeah, at that time it was still very early. It was in 2006. So the regulation for something like FDA in Indonesia is not as strict as now. So at that time, it took us about 6 months from first discussion to launching of the product. But now the last revision of our label from that same body, took us 2 years. So it is just a revision of label, took us 2 years. So the regulation became stricter. But originally, it took us only 6 months to launch.
Okay. Are there other questions you would like to address or provide to our speakers, or raise your hand? If not, maybe I launch into a last set of questions. The last set of questions would be for Patricia. Being a social entrepreneur yourself, and you also have engagements in other sector like the finance and technology, how can engaging with entrepreneurs help community enterprises grow, and what should they remember? So when partnering with entrepreneurs, if you have any kind of last message, how to engage with you, and in terms of the leapfrogging with technology and with finance, because that would also help them go to scale. What should they think about when adopting these different strategies for finance and technology? Any last thoughts on your recommendations? Oh, you got muted. It's not unmuting. Can she be unmuted?
Yeah, already unmuted.
There you go.
I think to be able to work together with the financing company, the biggest thing is the credibility and integrity of the contact person. Like in this case, in my case, is the head of cooperatives. He's recommended to me by Jaringan Madu Hutan Indonesia, which is the Honey Forest Association, and he has very high integrity, and we can trust him. So in fact, when the cooperatives don't have any bank account, we drop the money to him, but he didn't steal a penny. He faithfully spend everything for the efforts and pay everything back to us with zero NPL. So I think the integrity and credibility of one key person is very important to be able, because in finance they will give you a little bit first, but then as your credit risk go down with your first payment, they will give you more. So more money can only come if you successfully keep repaying, keep servicing your loan faithfully. So I think it's very important to have such one person that we can
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia, for that. Very important for CBNE's leadership, and basically someone that will also help help present the organization credibly. With Satoko, how can community enterprises find the right financing match, and what should they remember when choosing one? So this would be our last question.
Thank you very much. I think the credibility is very important one, as Patricia mentioned. If I add, again, I think how we could develop the relationship and the trust is very important, because investment is a long journey. So it is, some people say that it is like a marriage. So it sometimes goes well, sometimes not goes well. Or at the beginning, it is very happy, but then after you have like many ups and downs. So this is really a journey. So both sides, we didn't know each other before. So when we start investing, we know only little. We find out. So that when we start our working journey together, then we find out that we knew only little, and then we know each other little by little, and we create trust. And I think that is very important, especially for the early stage enterprises, or like a community investment. So for that, I think honesty is very important, and to share yourselves, because we don't know each other and we are so different. So it's very difficult to understand actually. Or everything is surprise. I mean, good surprise. I mean, there can be bad surprise as well, but many good surprises as well. So it's part of the journey and part of the joy actually, to really learn, to know and to really learn. But in order to do that, you need to express. I mean, you need to share and honestly, and that will create the joy. even bad things, I mean, bad things is damage, but in the end, I think even bad things, it will create some joy. We learn something at least. So to be honest and to share is very important, I think. To find the right match is, as I said, um, be mindful of your purpose, of your theory of change, and your reason of financing, so that you will be clear of what purposes that you are looking for, and then you will find the right match, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Satoko. Those are really important. And Jen, you have some thoughts on that last question on how we can engage, or any thoughts of how can maybe producer groups start building their own communities around their enterprises and causes. So
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to mention some of the things I also put in the chat of different groups that people can engage with. So like, at least for the Philippine-based enterprises, you can also connect with Forest Foundation Philippines for grant financing. And then just looking to the example of Greenprint as well, I think this is also important that community-based enterprises also engage with such initiatives that don't necessarily always just about selling product, but also, you know, advocating for the cause of, you know, protecting the land, protecting the culture. And I think this is something that consumers or citizens who are seeing the work that you do will also appreciate. So I think it kind of also goes back to what Satoko was saying about, you know, communication, and I'm hearing like building relationships and trust, and whatever channels you have to talk about what you value as well as an enterprise. I think that can also resonate or connect with the right investors, the right consumers, the right advocates who will help, you know, who will help you with not just your brand or your company, but really also help with the communities that you are ultimately trying to serve. So yeah, again, to what Satoko said, like really reflecting also on the purpose, and not really forgetting about that. It's more than just, as Femi said, the revenues that you're trying to generate. It's really about the service that you want to give to your community. And yeah, just a reminder, I guess, like, you know, muni comes from the Filipino word muni, which is to think, ponder, and reflect. And I hope that throughout your journey also as CBNEs, you are constantly like realigning and reflecting on your purpose and your values, and why it is that you want to do the work that you do, and to tell that story as you're doing it as well.
thank you. That's from a transformational coach. That's a very that's a very good good words, Jen. And I think we have now reached the time at 6:30, although we could extend a little bit more, but for us in the Philippines, it's already quite late hour, and I'm really happy that there are still many who still stayed on until this time. There, for others who are from another region, or maybe still an earlier time, even though we're all most of us are in Asia, still it has been a long day. So I'd like to personally thank all three of our panelists, Patricia, Satoko, and Jen, who have really openly, I think, all have been quite open about their experience. Maybe I can also ask, Jen has done it, but maybe Patricia or Satoko can write if you're okay to be contacted, or if you have a website, you can also drop it in the chat box for our participants to know how to find you. So thank you very much. I think what we have heard here, so our topic was about securing and scaling CBNEs, stakeholders and strategies. This does not speak of all the possible stakeholders that CBNEs can tap. These are only a few of them, but I think very competently our speakers have been able to share from their perspective, from financing, from tech point of view, from social entrepreneur side, from even private citizens, how they can be engaged. And a basic message for CBNEs to really also reach out to them. These are potentially the allies that you can have to be able to scale and secure your CBNEs. And they too have their own context and personalities. But from our speakers, they have shared their personal journeys. And a lot of the motivation also comes from personal theories of change or personal missions that they have. And it's good for the CBNEs to also get to know them kind of, in person, so to speak, to shed off this maybe sometimes unreachable personas. I think there were also quite good messages about tips for CBNEs about adapting to difficulties and challenges. Even the entrepreneurs and the finance tech companies also have had to learn this, and that's a challenge, but then something that can be surmounted. So CBNEs also are recommended to also maybe learn to adapt as well, get to know them. There are also some suggestions about very, very pointed recommendations from the financing impact investment side from Satoko about knowing what your purpose is, what impact do you really want to reach, and that would be good to communicate, because at the end of the day, if you're looking for your partners, they would also want to hear and understand that from you. These relationships from these different stakeholders would take time, and both would be served good if they actually kind of jointly go on this journey together, because after all, I think Satoko had mentioned that it is going to take long, and trust really does take time, and the showing, demonstrating credibility, honesty, and integrity will factor into that. And finally, that even as CBNEs, just from the message of Jen, that that in itself could also be a community. Well, you are coming from communities, but you can as well build communities of your allies and find your cause that you can also advocate for beyond also your own cost to sell your own community products. So that ends our session, but we have a message from our administrator that we will have a photo to remember our session today. So please open your videos and they will take our photos. Thanks a lot again. And Satoko, Jen, and Patricia, thank you very much. So Ellen, you will.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll
please stand by. Then I will count 3, 2, 1. Please be ready. And then I need more time because we have 3 slides here. Thank you. 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please don't forget our tomorrow is our 4th day, and we still have a lot of good sessions lined up for you. You also will see in the poll. Kindly also respond to the poll in front of you. Thank you very much.